Oh, the Los Angeles Rams have been riding the wave the past couple of seasons. They've got their young wonder kid genius of a play caller and a head coach in Sean McVay. And his ripple effects being felt throughout the league, where basically, if anybody had coached under him, talked with him, been associated with him, come within 10 feet of rubbing peepees with him, they were probably going to get consideration to be somebody's head coach. That's what this experience has been like for the Rams over the past couple of years. 2017, he comes in, big turnaround, make the playoffs. 2018, the Rams end up going all the way to the Super Bowl. Controversial win in the NFC Championship game in New Orleans against the Saints, but they go into the Super Bowl as a 2 seed from the NFC, and then they kind of face planted. That offense was ugly. It was just an ugly game in general to watch. But that said, if you are a Rams fan, it was a hell of a way for them to introduce themselves into the Los Angeles market. Their second and third seasons, they're playoff teams, and they're making it to the Super Bowl. The NFL most certainly has to be happy about it, and so on and so forth. So what was going to be next in 2019? Were the Rams going to continue? Were the Rams going to fall off a little bit, perhaps fall victim to the Super Bowl losers curse? Well, only time was going to tell. But you could tell that the Rams apparently believe very much in the relationship between Jared Goff and Sean McVay because they gave him the big money deal before they necessarily had to. And concerningly, after that egg that he laid in the Super Bowl, the Los Angeles Rams invested big money over a number of years into him to say that he's going to be our guy of the future. So if you're a Rams fan, you know it's going to be Jared Goff's team for the next several years to come. And this season certainly started off promising for this team. He had the early season win against the Saints, the game that Drew Brees went out with the injury. The Rams started off 3-0, and you're thinking, okay, even though maybe they were ready to take a bit of a step back this year, you're talking about this Rams team, they're 3-0, maybe. But then they go on to lose their next 3 games. In the process, you've got all this roster movement. They trade away Marcus Peters, trade away Aqib Talib. Then they make the big trade for Jalen Ramsey, which was really puzzling to me because some of the issues they were having were on the offensive side of the ball, notably Todd Gurley not looking or being the same. And it didn't help the offense making that big deal. And it really, frankly, didn't help the defense. And sometimes when you look at players statistically, it is really, really misleading. Like Jameis Winston threw for over 5,000 yards and had a 30-30 season. 30-something touchdowns, 30 interceptions. And that was majestic, every single bit of it. Majestic! But Jared Goff threw for over 4,600 yards again in 2019, and he still didn't look very good. And in key moments and in key spots, you could see where he's not that level of dude. He's borderline low-end franchise guy and certainly is not an elite dude. And in order for him to even play like a real franchise guy, everything around him has to be clicking. Everything around him has to be perfect because if anything is off, he's in trouble. And as a byproduct, that Rams offense is in trouble. Not to mention when you throw in Todd Gurley was not the same back this year. While Cooper Kupp was back from the injury, and he was really good. Robert Woods was really good. Brandon Cooks, not so much. You had Aaron Donald on the defensive side of the ball. It's still Aaron Donald, even though he didn't have the same number of sacks he had last year. He's still a beast. You got really good production from your 2 guys on the outside in Dante Fowler and Clay Matthews, who you brought in free agency from the Packers. They combined for 19.5 sacks. But you look at this Rams team, and there was just something missing and something was off with them throughout the whole year. And it was really crystallized in that really, really bad Week 15 loss to the Cowboys. That was a really bad, unfortunate loss for that team and basically, for all intents and purposes, ended their season. And so for this team that had made the playoffs the past couple of seasons, had come off of a Super Bowl appearance last year, they end up going 9-7 and not even making it to the big dance. And all the while, when you look at this team, you're talking about a team that's pretty close to up against it in terms of the salary cap, and it's not going to get any better the next couple of years. You're talking about a quarterback that you've tied big money into, and he is not a big time quarterback, and he has proven that over his 4 years in the league. Everything around him has to be perfect. He's got to have a lot of help in order for you to get the maximum out of him. If there's anything less than maximum help around him, you're going to get disappointing play no matter how many yards he throws for. And now you talk about a Rams team that's going to be missing their next couple of first-round picks because of the Jalen Ramsey deal. All the while, they still got to get a big-time contract done with Jalen Ramsey. Otherwise, that trade looks even more ridiculous. You're coming up on needing to give Cooper Kupp a contract extension. Are you going to do that now, or are you going to wait another year? You look at this and you say, okay, you've invested big money in Todd Gurley, but the return on the investment wasn't there in 2019. Are you going to keep him? Are you going to explore potentially moving on from him and trading him? Brandon Cooks, another guy you've invested big in, a guy that you once traded a first-round pick for. Are you going to keep him? Are you going to potentially trade him? Does he really bring that much to your offense at this point? There's a lot of questions. Wade Phillips not going to be the defensive coordinator anymore. There's a lot to worry about here with this Rams team, to where you could say they're going to have some big names on that roster for the next several years, but how good is this team really going to be? And when you look at their 2019 draft, Taylor Rapp had moments. He also had some really bad moments, but I have confidence he's going to be good. You look at some of the other guys like David Edwards, I think will be a long-time player on their offensive line. Darrell Henderson, maybe he'll get more involved and more in the fold as a different option out of the backfield in 2020. But you just look at this team in general and you say that's not a lot of contributions out of the draft class. And that's what the next couple of drafts are going to look like for this team, on top of the fact that you look at what they had to give up way back when in 2016 to move up from 15-1 to trade for Jared Goff in the first place. And this is a team that's gotten very little out of premium picks in the draft over the past several seasons, and eventually those chickens are going to come home to roost. And then, with only slightly more than $20 million in cap space, they've got some notable guys that they got to lock up. You're talking about Dante Fowler Jr., who's been really good for them since they traded him for him from the Jacksonville Jaguars. But he's an edge rusher. He's had a couple of really productive seasons for you. He's going to want big money. He's going to get big money, and he's going to require big money in order for you to keep him. Michael Brockers, your former first-round pick in 2012. You're probably going to want to keep him. Corey Littleton, Greg Zuerlein. You're talking about potentially having to invest a lot to just keep Dante Fowler himself, and that's not even trying to address some of the issues you have defensively and going out in the market and trying to improve. And all the while, again, you do not have a first-round pick. You only got 5 picks in this upcoming draft. So it'd be hard to envision this team getting a lot of help or getting, frankly, a lot better next season, which is especially concerning when you look at this team and their offensive line struggled at times. They were really bad at moments this year. Andrew Whitworth's done. So your top need is probably a long-term left tackle. Then you have the concerns about Todd Gurley, and is he ever going to be the same guy he once was? And indications probably point to no. So running back is a need, maybe not a primary need, but in order for this team to really work at its maximum effectiveness, they need a playmaker out of that backfield to take some of the pressure off of Jared Goff. You're still probably looking at investing on the interior of that offensive line a little more, and that doesn't even get to the defense, where I think you could definitely use some help at linebacker, particularly on the inside. If you don't retain Dante Fowler, then all of a sudden that edge rush outside linebacker position becomes of critical importance. And then when you look at that secondary, they're still not great. You've got Jalen Ramsey on one side, which you would assume they will step up and pay, and probably in this offseason, but they need some help on the opposite sides of him. You look at the Rams and you say, it could get ugly. And 2019 could have been the tipping point that starts sending them in the wrong direction. I mean, do you really have confidence that Jared Goff is the type of guy that can carry a team? I certainly do not. And after 4 years in the league, why would you think that he could be? Did you really want to tie up that much of your salary cap space into a guy it feels like so early and so unnecessarily? I don't know. There's still some issues on that offensive line. There are issues with the effectiveness of the running game. There are issues with their defense. If the Rams are back in the mix in 2020 and not bringing up the rear in the NFC West, then it's probably going to take some creativity out of that front office to reshape this roster a little bit on the go, with, mind you, not having a first-round pick in their disposal. And it's going to take one hell of a coaching job from Sean McVay, because this season should be a little bit alarming.